Good morning and welcome to Rising. We've got a great show to start off the week. Triple the hosts, triple the takes, triple the fun. I don't know. Does that sound about right?
Yeah.
That's what they say. Okay, let's get to our first story. Donald Trump returning to the site of the first attempt on his life in Butler, Pennsylvania. He was joined by thousands of his supporters. This was 3 months after the shooting, which wounded Trump and killed another person and injured others. Trump's running mate, J.D. Vance, was also at his side, as was a prominent endorser of the president, billionaire Elon Musk. Now, in his first appearance on the campaign trail, Musk jumped up and down with excitement and fervor before praising Trump's resolve after being shot at. Let's watch that.
The true test of someone's character is how they behave under fire. And we had one president who couldn't climb a flight of stairs, and another who was fist pumping after getting shot. America is the home of the brave. And there's no truer test than courage under fire. So who do you want representing America?
Trump said he felt an obligation to return to Butler and paid homage to the slain firefighter Corey Compatore, who died shielding his family from the shooter. Let's listen.
For 16 harrowing seconds during the gunfire, time stopped as this vicious monster unleashed pure evil from his sniper's perch, not so far away. But by the hand of Providence and the grace of God, that villain did not succeed in his goal. Did not come close. We have fought together, we have endured together, we have pushed onward together. And of course, there's one more hero who could not make it back here tonight because he is no longer with us. Right? You know who that is, right? Corey, our beautiful Corey. Corey is not with us tonight, and he should be.
Meanwhile, President Joe Biden expressed concern Friday about a Trump loss to Kamala Harris next month. In a rare appearance, here he is speaking from the podium in the White House briefing room.
Two separate questions. Very much. I'm confident it'll be free and fair. I don't know whether it'll be peaceful. The things that Trump has said and the things that he said last time out when he didn't like the outcome of the election were very dangerous. If you notice, I noticed that the vice presidential Republican candidate did not say he'd accept the outcome of the election. They haven't even accepted the outcome of the last election. So I'm concerned about what they're going to do.
There's been no shortage of mudslinging this election cycle. Speaker of the House Mike Johnson, the GOP leader, called for tamping down the rhetoric, singling out Democrats. Here he is on ABC This Week. Let's watch.
What they're referring to, though, is the absolute open attacks that have been engaged by Democrats against President Trump since the day he came down that golden escalator in 2016, okay? The lawfare is unprecedented. They've attacked him in every single way. They try to malign his character every single day. And the people have had enough of it. That's why you have these massive turnouts at the rallies. People have had enough of this. We need everybody on all sides to turn the rhetoric down, and let's have a debate about the records of these candidates, not the rhetoric. Let's talk about the policies, not the personalities. That's what the American people demand and deserve. These are serious issues the country's facing. We need to be talking about the ideas and the answers and the solutions to get out of them, and not all this other stuff.
So I think it was very smart for Trump to return to Pennsylvania where the shooting took place because it was a very effective spectacle, I thought, to be there, to project strength and that, we will overcome what happened. And also Pennsylvania is the most important swing state, so every visit there makes a lot of difference. What did you make of Elon Musk's involvement specifically?
Yeah, it was interesting. I mean, I'm not sure why he specifically needed to be at the Butler rally, but I think what he had to say about...
I think I know why he thought he needed to be there. I'm not sure why he actually needed to be there, right?
Very fair. But I mean, look, his speech was fine. He talked about Trump's response to the shooting, which obviously was, objectively phenomenal and incredible. And going back is brilliant, especially considering, I think, relatively how little media coverage both of the assassination attempts against Trump have really received. I mean, this was basically out of the news cycle within a week until Trump went back to Butler.
And until he got maybe
shot at
not shot at again, but you know,
almost shot at again. And that one similarly disappeared out of the news cycle within a few days.
Yeah.
So I mean, he should be talking about it more, because as much as we are talking about charged rhetoric and potential political violence, there's only one candidate that's actually been the victim of political violence.
Well, there's threats every day, and that's unfortunate, and it's happening at a record rate across the world, by the way. It's not just here in the United States. Of course, Nancy Pelosi's husband was brutally attacked at his home. This is a problem, and it's comical to me that you have a billionaire immigrant whose platform is partially responsible for this enhanced rhetoric. I mean, he makes money off of outrage. That is what this algorithm is built off of. So, you know, I don't know how the people of Butler really could feel the vibes with Elon Musk. I mean, my guess is a lot of them aren't even on Twitter, and definitely, you know, they might know who he is as the richest person in the world, but he's a billionaire. He has like nothing in common with any of these people. And then Donald Trump spends his entire rallies, anything gets spun to immigrants. And of course, he's an immigrant. Of course, he's a very wealthy immigrant. His father, you know, ran a mining company in South Africa. So it was just questionable choice all around. It may have even negated Trump showing up in Butler. It was a huge crowd, we'll say that.
Well, Elon's position, of course, is that, I mean, Elon's a legal immigrant. His position is that he supports legal immigration,
so
wants more of it, but he doesn't want illegal immigration. Yes, so are the Haitians. That is his position, and he also, now, I guess I agree with you that, you know, I don't know, the people of Butler, Pennsylvania are probably not the most online, Twitter-focused crowd in the world. And, you know, it's one thing to have this level of enthusiasm on Trump's behalf online. It's quite another to actually go campaign in the swing states, talk to people about the issues that matter to them, the economic issues. I don't know that I would accuse Elon of like weaponizing. I mean, that's what everyone in the media is doing. That's the purpose of the media. He's made the platform. Well, if no people,
he's losing. I mean, the value went down 80%. That's you know,
yeah,
Goldman Sachs
he chased off a lot of the people who wanted to have censorship on the site.
Well,
so
now he's censoring everybody else. But I mean, this is supposed to be this successful billionaire, and he's run Twitter to the ground. Goldman Sachs expected him to have. He's not. I mean,
Twitter's not his only company that he owns. He
had problems with Tesla also.
He literally, his company just saved the astronauts who were stranded in space. But I also don't know if I buy the fact that none of these people at this rally, or not many, are on X or Twitter and don't know who Elon Musk is. I think you would be surprised. And in fact, if we go back to the first assassination attempt against Trump, you might recall that some people on the left found Corey Comparator's X account and decided to attack him for his tweets that he sent out about Donald Trump after he was killed shielding his family. So, I mean, is that weaponization of hate speech or misinformation or whatever?
Those are anecdotes. I have no, there's no information on that.
So are yours.
But there's nothing of an anecdote. I mean, he lost the valuation of X went down by 80%.
But you say that he's weaponizing hate speech and political violence because he wants a platform for free speech, which he talked about at the rally. It's not a platform for free speech. The algorithm is not transparent. It's not equal. Before or after Elon Musk took hold of it, there's disinformation spreading like crazy. He still has bots, even though he claimed that he no longer wanted bots. But he wants bots because he wants to inflate his numbers, because he's trying to basically keep it alive. And if there are people at that rally on social media, they're probably on Truth Social, let's be real. So, I mean, this is a man who, he has had failed business after failed business. He claims to be the inventor of all these things. You know, he didn't invent electric cars. He didn't invent SpaceX and rocket launchers. He didn't invent Twitter, clearly. X is in crisis. I mean, Goldman Sachs had done a deck when he decided to purchase it, showing the investors this is how much is going to grow in the next 2 years, and he's already down 80%.
Well,
it's a mess.
Right. He said he's willing to do that because he cares on the principle of free speech. That acquiring the platform, well, he did transparency with respect to how all of those moderation decisions were made during the pandemic and relating to the Hunter Biden laptop and all of that.
But that was
he had tremendous transparency, which is beneficial. I don't agree with every single one of the policies made, but he has He's a free speech policy. There's less banning of people for mysterious or unexplained reasons, and that's a good
was
thing.
Banned?
Well, he explained why. He was for putting the Social Security number in the thing.
I had a video that I posted, and I went public about this. I did an investigative story on Puerto Rico over a year ago, 6 months later, it was taken down. We learned because the target of the investigation was friends with Elon Musk, and they took it down. So we reposted it, and it stayed up. He called in a favor to Elon Musk and said, please take this down because it's causing a lot of controversy, and it had to do with these tax breaks and some money laundering that he was doing. So, I mean, it's not democratic. And when we went to Twitter to try to ask what happened, not only could we not reach anybody, the pages are not valid. They go, to challenge your, whatever decision is made.
But that happened
you click on a button and then
hundreds of conservatives for years.
And
that was the reality.
I mean,
shadow banning is real, but it's not one-sided.
I just find it ironic that you're saying, like, my anecdotal evidence about multiple people on the left attacking Cory Comparator for pro-Trump tweets after literally sacrificing his life for his family is not valid, but your anecdote about you getting a video taken down off of X is?
Well, so anybody can respond. It could be bots. I have no idea who attacked him. You're assuming they're on the left. But my anecdote is actually coming from the company. The company did not have a response. The company did not have a valid page to challenge. I was a journalist. I was verified at the time. We had spent money producing this. I mean, this is supposed to be a free speech platform, but he does not have the same rules for everybody. And he continuously, and he's profiting off of it. Right now, he's pushing a scheme where he's trying to get people to invest in betting on Trump, and said today that Trump is leading Kamala by 3% in betting. I mean, this is wild. This isn't free speech. This isn't journalism. This isn't equal opportunity. This is him wanting to take advantage of a situation, and he's also killing the app on top of it.
I mean, it's his company. He can set whatever policies he wants. He has changed the policies, I would argue, to be somewhat, not perfectly transparent or perfectly in favor of free speech. You bring up, the algorithm is just like, it's a business, and to succeed, it sells ads and subscriptions, so it wants to serve you more of the kind of content you want to engage with. In that way, it is like every other social media platform in that Facebook is the same way, YouTube is the same way, right? That's their business model. It's not. It's just because they're like, it's not a nonprofit. It's trying to turn a profit. It is similar to all other social media.
You can admit that. The algorithm before, say, 2016 was different. And this has been reported on endlessly, that the algorithms have shifted on a lot of these platforms, not just for profit, but also they're profiting off of outrage. So the more people get in a fight, the more, we know this.
I mean, I used to be a little skeptical when people on the right would complain about the algorithm, like deprioritize. I'm like, well, it's creating a business. So I'm now similarly skeptical of people on the left saying, like, oh, it's not rewarding my content. Like, it's trying to make money it's trying to make the website profitable, as you said, based on a feedback loop of the kind of content you want to engage with. So if it's become a more conservative place, it's going to give you more conservative content because that's what the users want.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that the framing is that you're putting on it is that the algorithm is incentivizing outrage, but really what it's doing is incentivizing engagement, which is one of the most basic ways that you make sure people are seeing content that they want to see, which is that when you see it, you're liking it, or you're retweeting it, or you're responding to it. And of course, sometimes that's going to prioritize posts that make people angry, but that doesn't mean that he is intentionally trying to foment outrage, but just that he wants people interacting with the content that gets put on their feed.
I mean, what if outrage is the correct emotion, the correct way to respond to what is happening in the world right now?
That's fair enough.
It's outrageous times.
I mean, there's lots of ways you can encourage engagement. I'll leave it with this. The disinformation is another thing. I know that the community can fact check, but he himself, Elon Musk, pushes disinformation all the time, and I find that really concerning given his power in this world, the amount of money he has, and really muddying the waters between he's giving money to independent expenditures. We have very strong campaign finance laws in this country when it comes to IEs, independent expenditures, needing to be separate from the campaign. Then he appears on the campaign stage. Then he's raising money for betting for Donald Trump on his platform. He's using he's promoting people and pro-Trump messages on his platform. Yes, companies do have the ability to have a political stance, but they cannot be directly related to the campaign. That is where there's a firewall, and he does not seem to understand campaign finance laws.
Look,
he is going to catch up with him.
I mean, he is very pro-Trump, and he's geared Twitter to be that way. This just was never a problem for any other social media company. Facebook has been accused of being like very, very pro Hillary Clinton, going back
Cambridge
to there,
Analytica
all
was
that
very
stuff.
pro-Trump. What are you talking about? They had an exclusive deal with Facebook.
Mark Zuckerberg endorsed obviously Hillary Clinton. Actually, even going back even further, the Obama campaign bragged about how important Facebook was to their success. They had one of the co-founders working for the campaign at the time, right? So it was just celebrated, like how social media was beneficial for Democrats. Then when it started being beneficial to Republicans in some cases, then we had the panic about misinformation and hate speech and outrage and all that. So I think it's been a little selective. But we have to move on today. We've got a lot more to get to on the show. Stay tuned. More Rising in just a minute. And now we turn to Michigan, one of the swing states that's a must-win for Vice President Kamala Harris, my home state. A very, very tight lead for Kamala Harris right now, just 0.2 of a point, according to the Hill's polling.
The growing crisis in the Middle East echoes in this must-win state, which has the highest concentration of Arab Americans in the nation. About 200,000 Arab Americans live in Michigan. The explosive situation in the Middle East, which has only spread over the last year, has made it a tough place for Harris.
With us now to give a sense of where things are in Michigan for both candidates is Michigan Public Radio's Rick Pluta. Rick, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for the invitation.
Sure. So when we're looking at these polls, we have basically everything within the margin of error. Trump up 2, Kamala up 3. Which polls should we really be looking at that do the best job of predicting Michigan?
Well, first of all, as you well know, when it comes to polling, that you really don't know how accurate it is until after the election. I like the amalgam of polls to get a more thorough view of how different the data that the different pollsters are coming up, and so I like the amalgam of polls. 538 is good. Your Decision Desk is good to sort of track in a broader sense what's going on. And like you said, it's very tight. It's within the margin of error, single digits, and we have candidates and campaigns. Both the Republicans and the Democrats, the Harris and Trump tickets are making, weekly visits, sometimes multi-weekly visits to the state to try and fire up voters. And where we're seeing the swing areas is, back in the 90s, there was famously the Macomb County voters, what were, called the old Reagan Republican Democrat coalition. Now we're seeing that spread out to Macomb and Saginaw and Genesee counties in mid-Michigan. And we also have some congressional vacancies that are making a difference in the outlook.
Rick, I've campaigned in Michigan, and it's a fascinating place because, we look at Arab Americans as sort of this monolith. And, not only is there this uncommitted group, I'm curious to see how large you think that is, but also you have different types of Arab Americans. You have folks from Palestine, you have Lebanese folks, and it was reported today that Tiffany Trump's father-in-law, a prominent Lebanese businessman, has been advocating for Trump in Michigan as well, which could be stirring the numbers. So could you help us understand, and not to mention the progressive African-American vote that often aligns, in specifically Michigan, Detroit area with these voters. Can you help us understand the mix of these voters and specifically, I think we're keeping our eyes on the uncommitted voters, which did protest the DNC, but it was by no means at the level that folks had anticipated. Is it really playing out on the ground to be that significant right now?
Well, first of all, I guess I'd make this point that Michigan appears to be so close right now that I don't know that there's very much that is insignificant. And so, Democrats and Republicans are, sort of stewing over the Arab American vote in Southeast Michigan. And just to, sort of paint a picture that we have some of the best Middle Eastern food in the country. And if you go to communities like Dearborn, portions of Detroit, that you have, restaurants that are competing against each other other over who's got the best falafel, for example. And so it is a big deal, and Gaza is a big deal. We also have a significant Jewish vote in Oakland County, which is also in Metro Detroit, and that's making a difference. And so the Republicans and the Democrats, the Harris and the Trump campaigns are doing a balancing act in terms of trying to make their appeals to voters. Keeping in mind that what's going on in Gaza right now is very raw in Michigan, that there are people who are taking this very personally, that, some of them still have family there who are living through what's going on.
Absolutely, and it is so close, and you're right to pick up on something you said earlier about just not knowing what the size of the polling error is going to be, because these were states that Biden did win last time, but he won them by much smaller margins than polls were suggesting even right before the election. We're also, assuming all three of those, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, all going to go the same way. But of course, the question becomes, well, does Michigan, is this a specific issue for Kamala, given what the administration has, the policy with respect to Gaza? And thus, there's a realm where she wins Michigan and loses Pennsylvania, but there's also a future where she loses Michigan and wins Pennsylvania. And then with some other combinations of the swing states, that could really matter.
Mm-hmm. And the way that, in these closing weeks of the campaign, the way that the campaigns allocate resources to, which swing states is going to be telling in terms of what they say and who's movable and who's in play and who's maybe out of play. And that can change on a near daily basis when you're seeing these kinds of, and when you're seeing these kinds of margins. For the Democrats, the good news is that the fundraising has been going very well. Also, that Republicans have a problem that Michigan is an early voting state, easy absentee ballot voting state, and Republicans have been messaging for months that these forms of voting are unreliable. And now they're going back and telling their base voters, which is just, utterly critical. They can't win without turning out the base big. That now, these Republican voters who've been told that these ways of voting are unreliable should now be getting in and voting right now, because as you guys well know, that once a campaign has a vote banked, that's a vote that they don't have to go out and fight for.
It's interesting you say that, because in 2020, there were mail-in votes. And as a result, you saw Joe Biden win by 150,000 votes, Whereas in 2016, Hillary Clinton notably lost Michigan by, 11,000 votes? So it's kind of hard if you're a campaign right now. How do you gauge what's real and what's not when 2020 was a pandemic year and there was record turnout everywhere? So is it somewhere in between the Hillary loss and the Biden win? That's a huge margin. That's almost 200,000 vote difference.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's an axiom in campaigning, political campaigning, that 2/3 of what you do, and I'm making up the number, but a lot of what you do, maybe even most of what you do, doesn't matter. You just don't know which portion of that is until after the campaign is over. And so, and like we've been pointing out, that, Michigan, like Wisconsin, like Pennsylvania, is really, really tight. And so it's kind of, you're worried about everything all the time as you're trying to figure out what to do next. And we're seeing that in terms of the of the candidate top of the ticket visits to the state.
We saw Kamala Harris meeting this week with Arab American leaders in Michigan, but we also saw her meeting with the UAW president, Shawn Fain. Obviously, the white working class is a big voting bloc in Michigan as well. Trump typically performs better with less educated or non-college educated white voters, and notably broke through this blue wall back in 2016. What are the campaigns doing respectively to win over those voters, especially when Kamala Harris is being hit by the Trump campaign on her history of lobbying for electric vehicle mandates?
Mm-hmm. Well, so you're covering a lot of ground there, but yeah, the EV issue is a big one, and we have seen Harris kind of pivot on that, and so and for the Republicans, they're not really looking to win the African American vote or even the African American male vote, which is one of the targets. The same with the Arab American vote in Michigan. That they just have to trim the margins. That they have to lose by less and attract just a fraction of those votes to maybe make the difference when all is said and done. One of the reasons why the Harris campaign is focusing so much on early voting and college campuses, because those are more reliable Democratic voters if you can get them out and and dropping off their ballots.
Rick, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Appreciate the invitation.
Disinformation and conspiracy theories are clouding the cleanup of Hurricane Helene. Some of the wildest claims came from Georgia Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene. She wrote on X, "Yes, they can control the weather. It's ridiculous for anyone to lie and say it can't be done." However, it is unclear who they are that Greene is referring to in that scenario. In another post earlier on Thursday, Greene shared a map of the states affected by Helene with an overlay of their political leanings by county.
One X-user wrote, "People with decades of experience have never seen anything like this. We've never seen this before because it was man-made or at the very least man-influenced weather manipulation." Another user said, "Feds are confiscating all of the land even if the houses are standing and will bulldoze everything."
Per the New York Times, at least 225 people have died, and there are ongoing searches for missing people from the Category 4 storm. Thousands remain without power and access to critical necessities. Greene and former President Donald Trump have been critical of FEMA's handling. So too have some residents, like this one who told the New York Post that, quote, "Nobody's been bringing in supplies except civilians."
They have also pushed what has now been proven to be a false narrative, that FEMA is using funds to house illegals instead of restoring the damage. Okay, so a couple things. FEMA funds were not used on any sort of illegal program. FEMA disaster funds are specifically allocated for baby formula, water, improving your house, and that's just the $750. That's not even the recovery funds, which is a whole other set of funds. The immigration, the migrant issue was a special grant set aside. Not to mention, Donald Trump, of course, did the same thing when he was president. But aside from that, Marjorie Taylor Greene, I find it fascinating. We know who she's talking about. She, in the past, had said that Jewish people were sending out space lasers, and she has been in conflict with Laura Loomer over who's crazier, but some would say maybe it's because Laura Loomer is also Jewish. She has an issue with the Jewish community and disinformation. And so, just like Donald Trump likes to throw everything at immigrants, any sort of problem there is, it's their fault, she tends to have that issue with the Jewish community.
You believe in climate change, right?
I do.
And you think that extreme weather is influenced by climate change, is that correct?
I do.
So then isn't it somewhat accurate to say that we have a level of control over the
I do
weather?
think climate change is man-made. Do I think it's something that the Jews are controlling?
Well, she didn't say Jews.
Are we all familiar with cloud seeding and how it was used by the U.S. military?
Oh, yeah, I know what you're talking about. Go ahead.
I believe it was the Vietnam War. And then there's also some reports that they might have done this during Woodstock to make it rain so that there was total chaos during
Woodstock.
that. Yeah, exactly. So, it is a fact that there are ways to control weather to some extent. Obviously, I don't know who Marjorie Taylor Greene is talking about. And I would also say...
It's a trope. We know who she's talking about.
I would also say that...
I don't know if she knows who she's talking
right.
about.
Right. I assume based on the insinuation of her tweet, she's talking about Democrats. If she's posting a map of the Republican counties, I don't think that this makes any sense whatsoever. And actually, I think it's an unnecessary distraction from the fact that this is a very intense tragedy. The deaths are almost surely being undercounted very significantly right now. I just spoke to a current state official and a former federal official who have both reported that people are literally burying their family members in their front yard because the morgues are so overwhelmed. There are trucks with piles of bodies being transported from Asheville to Greensboro in the hopes of finding space. At the end of this, it is entirely possible that the death toll is higher than Hurricane Katrina. And I think regardless of, whether or not the illegal immigrant fund is separate from FEMA or not, I mean, I understand that until 2023, it was a part of FEMA, that they did have an emergency shelter program that was funded from FEMA. It was changed in 2023 to make it a separate program that was funded by Customs and Border Patrol. But the fact that the official dollar amount that has been sent to these 6 states that have been affected by the hurricane has only reached about $150 million. This was confirmed by the Biden administration in a press release yesterday. When we just sent another $160 million to Lebanon and have sent additional $300 million to Ukraine.
To say nothing about, I know a lot of people were pointing to this on social media. Remember the floating pier we built to deliver supplies to Gaza? What was it, $230 million?
$300 million for the pier. That's what I was thinking of, not Ukraine.
Something that worked.
We sent billions to Ukraine.
Something that was operable for a few days before it broke down and sunk into the ocean.
Disaster, of course.
Absolute disaster. The point being that it seems like emergency funds are always put together for our friends and allies overseas, but there's no dramatic leap into action when it's Americans in
And you're right, it is bipartisan. And that is the biggest problem, is that our people who are supposed to be representing us in Congress, for the most part, do not give a damn about everyday Americans, and they are more than happy to fund foreign wars and conflicts and give foreign aid to all these other countries. And this is why Trump's message resonates, because America first means American citizens first. And that has not happened for a very long time.
But he's not America first, he's not American citizens first, he's not global stability first, he's Trump first. With that being said, I would love it if Republicans and Democrats decided to put money into supporting American people, if they funded, Medicare for all, if they fully funded teachers' salaries, if they really invested in our infrastructure, our infrastructure which is in decay. It started to rebuild with under the Biden administration. I would love for that to happen. Instead, you had over 100 Republicans voting against the FEMA funding just this spring, and that is now playing out in real time. Now, there are other emergency funds they have access to, and of course, that is something that Biden has talked about. But it's abysmal, it's offensive that you have some Republicans who think FEMA doesn't deserve to be funded, and then you also have some Republicans who voted against the funding because they don't believe climate change is real, to this day. I don't care if you think it was space lasers that caused the climate change, the storm, or not. These people need support.
Most accept that climate change is real. The debate is over the extent of the harm it's going to cause and how do we deal with the trade-offs. That obviously we don't want to hold ourselves back. We don't want to go without the comforts we have, and also we know that even if we did do that, other countries are massively contributing to the problem as well. So what if we do, we'll make a difference? Can we solve these issues by, gradually transitioning and improving technologically without causing massive disruptions to our society? The extent to which it does contribute to extreme or harmful weather is still under some debate. So I think those are the conversations that are happening.
So right now, a lot of folks have left, Florida and moved to North Carolina, or they've moved to other parts of the country where they thought that they were going to be able to escape climate issues. Folks can't get insurance on their houses now. I mean, can we at least solve that, where people lose their homes and they're relying on a $750 payment from FEMA, potentially something through bureaucracy that they have to go through much later?
There is too much bureaucracy. We don't want to, I don't want to solve these problems. I don't think this will solve problems to invent or bolster new federal bureaucracies. The best thing you can do is just get cash to people directly.
And in fact, we've seen that bureaucracy in this case has made things worse. They have been trying to prevent private citizens. This has been reported in multiple cases of providing aid to their fellow citizens. There's been medical tents shut down, supply tents shut down. There's been massive delays in rescue helicopters getting permission to land in some of these emergency zones. And one of the big problems in North Carolina specifically is that the head of the National Guard, who was appointed by Democratic Governor Roy Cooper, took 3 days to mobilize a mere 500 troops out of the 5,500 total that had to be brought in from other states. Now, Roy Cooper could fire the head of the National Guard for this delayed response. He has not. Joe Biden could federalize the response and supersede the state's poor handling of the crisis. He has not done that. So there's all of this confusion and inability for the FEMA administrators who are there on the ground, the officials, the staff, to give people what they need, and also let people who are trying to help each other do that for one another.
So
that should be happening.
This happens. It's no excuse. I mean, I was in Puerto Rico after Hurricane Maria, and you couldn't even get through the streets. I mean, some of it is logistical, right? It's not just that they can't. It takes 3 days. It's that when roads are shut down, when there are trees
But he didn't
blocking.
send the order until 3 days in. That's the problem.
But this is. I'm not saying it's an excuse. And across the board, these types of situations should be improved upon, especially since there are more storms happening. But oftentimes there is a delay, and there is a how do we organize in the face of chaos? Whether your phone's not working and you can't reach your administrator, the phone lines are down, the power is down. I mean, there's just logistical stuff that happens on the ground level, the FEMA administrators, to the top that they can't communicate. That's why mutual aid is so important, is suddenly neighbors start to realize, well, the only way that we can help each other is helping each other, pull the power lines up again, which is very dangerous, don't do that. Or, saw the trees that have fallen so you can get access through the road, and check in on your elderly neighbor.
George Bush took a lot of flack, right, for the Hurricane Katrina response because he was the sitting administration. So if that was fair, I think it was, I think it's fair to knock the administration for the response currently, even if the problems are, more fundamental and have to do with the federal bureaucracy.
We have Alejandro Mayorkas at an upscale men's clothing shop on Saturday, strolling around with his bags of fancy sweaters. I remember when Condoleezza Rice was accosted for shoe shopping in the middle of Katrina, which rightfully so, but no one seems upset that Mayorkas is not working around the clock to make sure that this disaster is handled appropriately. These people genuinely and rightfully feel like they have been totally forgotten and left behind. You don't even see much coverage of this anymore after this past weekend. And I think it's shameful the way that these people have been treated. No one seems to be really taking this seriously, and no one seems to understand really the gravity of what's happened here. I mean, we really are probably looking at 1,000 to 1,500 people dead.
This is terrible. More Rising coming up next.
Nehoray Levy's life changed forever 1 year ago. That was the day he was dancing at the Nova Festival, music festival, in Kibbutz Rim in southern Israel. The world stopped, and then went all but dark. Gunfire was all he could hear, then the screams and cries of panic. Scores of Hamas militants rode up on motorcycles, ATVs, and on foot, he says. Levy ran in the hopes of getting away. He had served in the IDF, and he was even an instructor, but that was no match for the number of Hamas soldiers on the ground. He even recorded this video in case he did not survive. Let's watch.
המחבלים ממש מתקרבים. הסיטואציה ממש הזויה, אבל אמא, אבא, אני אוהב אתכם ועל כל מה שעשיתם בשבילי. תודה לחיים, אני אוהב אתכם. תהיו שמחים, תהיו מאושרים, תהיו מאוחדים. אני מקווה שאנחנו נצא מהיום הזה בסדר. המחבלים מתקרבים לפה ויורים עלינו, ואם לא, תדעו שאני אוהב אתכם, את משי, את דור, את כולם. אני אוהב אתכם ותודה לכם על כל השנים שהייתם איתי. וזהו, מקווה שהסרטון הזה לחינם, אבל אם לא, אני אוהב אתכם.
Now, 1 year later to the day when the war broke out between Hamas and Israel, we are speaking to one person to listen to what he endured and survived, and what he thinks about the future, his country's, and the world's. Welcome, Nehoray. Thank you so much for joining us, and we're very honored to be able to talk to you today. It's a very difficult day, and just checking in how you're holding up first.
First of all, thank you for having me. It's a hard day because we're also trying to navigate our feelings, our emotions, the way of thinking about the future, because we're reliving our trauma today, especially with all the videos and everything that's going on social media, that bringing up everything again, all the videos, all the sensitive and graphic pictures and videos. we're trying to stay strong.
I know it's very difficult to relive this story over and over, and especially in a day like today, and as this plays out in the world every day in the news. But if you can, could you tell us a little bit about what happened to you that day when you were at the Nova Festival?
On October 7th, we went, dozens of friends, to be together, to reunite after we've been traveling for a long time around the world. I lost 10 of them on October 7th. For me, it was 18 hours of escaping, of fighting my way out, trying to survive. I tried at first to help people, to evacuate people from the area, to help people who were wounded by gunfire. It was a nightmare of us trying to escape, surrounded by hundreds of terrorists without seeing any bright light or any option that will make it out. That's why also at some point I felt that I'm not gonna make it, and I recorded that goodbye video for my family, because I didn't see myself making my way out. We ran for a few hours. At some point, I managed to help survivors to escape. I opened some of the bushes and trees to help them hide themselves. Thank God I managed to help a few people to survive, and it gave me a lot of strength and power to keep fighting. Because we also carrying a lot of guilt, all the survivors, that we were the chosen ones who survived. But at the end of the day, we're all humans, we're all the same. We escaped for a few hours until it got to a point we were so dehydrated and so exhausted we couldn't even speak to each other. And I remember we didn't even speak about the things that we're witnessing because it was too intense for our brain, for our mind to even approach that subject, to even try to process what we're looking at. We were numb. We just acted, we just ran. It was a Russian roulette. It wasn't right or wrong decisions. It was like you acting and trying to do your best at those moments and praying for your life. Because all of you see around you is death and devil's eyes all over that trying to hunt more and more people. And the atmosphere, of course, was so different for us. A moment before we were dancing, laughing, celebrating life, youth, young generation came to celebrate, to enjoy, to be connected by peace, love, and trance music. And then you're finding yourself running for your life, hunted by hundreds of terrorists.
In the interview,
those are feelings that's really hard to process even today.
In the interview you gave to Jewish News, and I, apologize to make you recount any of this because it's so horrifying and graphic, but you recounted seeing people not just murdered around you, but also that you witnessed considerable sexual assault. Is that right?
So, because we were hiding for a lot of hours around the festival area, we could hear a lot of screams, and some of them were of girls. For a long time, what were sounds as sexual abuse, and also a good friend of mine who, thank God, survived. He witnessed everything with his eyes, and therefore I knew that I'm not hallucinating or just dreaming that I heard some voices. It was intense until today. Those voices, they're not like just disappeared. They're with us. All the noises, all the smells, all the things that we saw. It's not leaving you. It's just you're trying to learn how to live with those demons, with those new things that you have in life, and trying to find the best way for you to make them less affected by you. Like, I don't want to be affected by them. I'm trying to build kind of protective boundaries with myself.
Nehoray, it's really shocking to see how long it took for the Israeli forces to come and rescue you. You know, you had mentioned in previous interviews that you had gone into the fields and the forests, as you said, and then you had to go keep running, and then you were taken and you went to another location, and then you had to escape again. Can you tell us at what point you were finally safe and rescued, and how long that took?
So after I helped all the other people to escape and I helped them to heal themselves, all of my friends already took off, and I found myself alone, surrounded by hundreds of terrorists. I recorded that goodbye video, and then I had one moment of clarity that I said, I can't make peace with the idea that I'm going to be dead by the end of the day, and I need to fight for my life right now, literally. So I decided to run. It was 50-50 situation because I knew that there are terrorists all over. I left the spot that I kind of hit myself there. I started to run. They started to shoot heavily towards my direction. Unfortunately, I saw in that run people next to me collapsing, getting shot. Without me, without the ability to help them, I kept running for a few hours until at some point one truck came, and the driver came to help more people from the festival. He dropped us off at one of the crossroads between Community Patish and Beis Urim, which also we know that went to brutal massacre. I remember when we got to that crossroad, we started to understand that there's something off and something intense, because we already saw all the abandoned cars, all the bodies. It looked like an apocalypse. And then there were another man, an angel, that came from Community Patish with his vehicle, and he helped us to escape from that spot. Because also some of us already started to walk towards Beis Urim, and we know what happened there. So it was another miracle for us that guy came and kind of forced us to come with him to go to Community Patish. We got to Community Patish. We've been there for 10 minutes in an underground bomb shelter until we felt we were safe. That wasn't the case. I remember I started to throw up so much because I felt sick. My body felt as if finally he can collapse and feel all the feelings that he needs to feel after everything I witnessed on the way. But then 5 minutes after, someone just kept screaming that there is more terrorists that coming towards our direction to the bomb shelter. So again, we needed to take off. We took off. We kept running. At the end, it took me 18 hours to get back home. The day after at 12 a.m. It's hard even to think about all those things even today, because there's a lot of parts that we're trying to not think about because of the intensity and the things that we saw. Because it's not something that humans can do. It's just not something that human being can do. It's even the savage animal can't do that thing. I can't think about anything in the world that can make that thing to bodies, to people. Some of my friends, it took 3 weeks to recognize their bodies because of the brutality and the way they were murdered.
After this 18-hour ordeal, was there a moment where you reunited with your family and specifically your parents? And what was that like? Did you show them this video that you had made in the case that you didn't make it out?
So my family saw that video in one of the documentaries that I participated. They were shocked. The sadness. They also been traumatized from that day. They're still trying to kind of back to normal, even with the relationship that they have with me as the youngest in the family. Because they were also in a nightmare. The last call that I have with my parents, and it's when all the terrorists started to walk towards my direction, I told my father that they starting to shoot towards me, and I need to hang up because I can't make any noises. I hang up the phone, and that was the last call for 10 hours until they heard from me again.
In the last year, I can imagine dealing with the trauma has been very intense, but the whole community, I mean, the whole country of Israel, of course, is traumatized by this, as you said, even your parents. What is the community of survivors doing right now to raise awareness, to stay together, and especially in the midst of what has now become a global crisis?
So, from what I can see, all the survivors doing different things with all of the advocacy, with all the resources to help to get more therapy, to get more like help and more therapists that will help us. And we're trying to speak with each others and like be in touch, because it's really hard for someone that haven't been through that thing to understand you. We opened, unfortunately, like a new frequency that we can speak to each other and really understand the depth of the things behind the emotions and feelings that we're trying to express between each other. So it's really important for us, the survivors, to speak. It's really important for us to speak, to share everything, because it can kill you from the inside also. So you really need to be aware and be connected to your feelings, to your emotions, and like verbally say all the time how I feel, how like I'm seeing some stuff, how I'm like experiencing some stuff around me, in order for in the environment also to understand me, so they'll be able to understand me, my trauma, my triggers, my PTSD, because it's still something that I'm learning. I'm getting to learn my new me these days. And we're trying to fight together, all the survivors, for all our rights, for a better future, for change. And I'm doing it with my girlfriend since October 8th, that I'm going to lobbies, events around the world, delegations, to speak with more and more people, to bring awareness to what happened and also how to deal with PTSD. And also that we all need to believe in humanity. Mm-hmm. That's it all about. Yeah. Just believe in humanity. That's it. We won't have all those problems, all those apocalypses in life and
yeah. Nehoray Levy, thank you.
I truly believe that we'll be able to make that change if we will truly with full honest aim to get all that purpose of believing in humanity. Doesn't matter what your religion, where you're coming from. We're all humans.
Thank you so much for joining us today on this very difficult 1-year anniversary of all this horror. We appreciate it, and we wish you all the best. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
More Rising right after this.
Minnesota Governor Tim Walz made his first appearance as the Veep pick on Fox News Sunday and tried to correct what he says are misrepresentations of his record. Let's watch.
I don't think people care whether I used IUI or IVF when we talk about this. What they understand is Donald Trump would resist those things. Look, I speak passionately. I had an entire career, decades before I was in public office. They know, and I'm very proud of my 24 years in service and my record. I have never disparaged someone else in this, but I know that's not what Donald Trump does.
Bream pressed Walz on Minnesota's abortion law, which has no limits on terminating pregnancy. Here's that exchange.
Look, the vice president and I have been clear. The restoration of Roe versus Wade is what we're asking for.
But that law goes far beyond Roe v. Wade.
To make her own choice. The law is very clear. It does not change that. That has been debunked on every occasion.
But wait. Let's agree. What you signed is there's not a single limit through 9 months of pregnancy. Roe had a trimester framework that did have limits through the pregnancy. The Minnesota law does not have that.
This puts the decision with the woman and her health care providers. The situation we have is when you don't have the ability of health care providers to provide that, that's where you end up with a situation like Amanda Zaworski in Texas, where they are afraid to do what's necessary. This doesn't change anything. It puts the decision back on to the woman, to the physicians, and we know that this is simply something to be brought up to be very clear. Donald Trump's asking for a nationwide abortion ban.
Wait,
and again, we don't see this as a winning campaign.
He has said repeatedly that he will not sign a national abortion ban. Are you calling that it's a flat-out lie?
Yes, of course.
Well, look, I give Tim Walz credit for doing adversarial media. Everyone should do more of that. He's done a small number of interviews, but it's good to see him getting out there. What do you make of his responses?
I actually thought this was great for him. He shined. This is where he does well. He's very good with one-on-one. I don't know. I still give him a B for the debate, but I wish that whoever prepared him for the debate really started to lean into what made him strongest. I mean, I know they were trying to make him the most likable guy, but he's naturally likable. Even when he's giving interviews and they're tough questions, he still comes across as likable, but he's still tough. So I think, everybody, as he said, he's been in public office for a long time, and people misspeak. Not everybody understands what an IUE is compared to an IVF. I know IVF very well, and even then it gets complicated. Did you know that egg freezing is also IVF? A lot of people don't. So, if you're talking to normal people on TV and you're really trying to educate them as quickly as possible, you misspeak all the time. I think all in all, it was a very tough interview. Shannon Bream is incredibly pro-life. I've had to be interviewed by her in the past too. She knows her facts for her side very well, and I think he was prepared to respond.
Yeah, there's misspeaking like he did at the debate when he said he was friends with the school shooter or whatever. And then there's what I would say is like a history of serial exaggerations about what happened with the IVF situation, IUE, his military record, his drunk driving incident, all of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's my problem, is that he often minimizes this down to, well, I said IUI instead of IVF, or I got the date a little mixed up. But there is a pattern of exaggeration, if not outright lies. I mean, on the service record question, he repeatedly uses a rank that he did not earn and continues to use it to this day. During the introduction video on the DNC stage for his speech, they still referred to him as Command Sergeant.
The New York Times did correct him on that one.
Yeah,
and then that's an exaggeration.
And the Tiananmen Square, I mean, that's a very odd thing to misspeak about, trying to be deaf to get out of a DUI, in his campaign lying about the circumstances of the traffic stop, and then in addition on the service record continuously talking about not just carrying weapons in war, but also saying that he suffered PTSD from his service during a moment in Congress. I mean, this is
he was
a pattern.
Stationed abroad. It wasn't. He didn't go into fighting, of course. We know that, active fighting. But he was stationed abroad. And listen, I mean, it was post 9/11. There's a lot. I never deny anybody's PTSD because you have no idea what's internally happening. With that being said, guys, we're talking about Trump here. Like Tim Walz compared to Donald Trump. First off, he's not even running against Donald Trump directly. He's running against J.D. Vance, who, let's talk about flip-flopping and lying and being all over the place. The man said he had nothing to do with Project 2025, yet not only was he backed by the folks who wrote Project 2025, he wrote the introduction to Project 2025. I mean, Donald Trump has been everywhere on abortion.
Okay.
He literally
wrote a
opening.
foreword for Kevin Roberts' book. He did not write the intro for Project 2025.
He also claimed he didn't know Kevin Roberts. And then you have Donald Trump, who has flip-flopped on everything, especially abortion. So, the fact that the media is like playing both sides of this, okay, let's look at the mounting evidence of lies from the Trump-Vance campaign.
If flip-flopping is a crime, is Kamala Harris not the biggest offender of all? Like literally undoing or going back on every single ideological commitment she made when she ran in 2019?
2019 is a commitment, and yes, politicians flip-flop. But lying continuously, I mean, the entire campaign, Donald Trump campaign is built off of misinformation. The fact checks got so out of control that they didn't even want to fact check during the debate. They had that little hashtag.
Can you give us some examples so we can actually talk about it instead of just like throwing out misinformation and lies, and we can talk about specifics?
It is 2024. Are we still debating this? His abortion
Clearly.
stances have changed. I mean, we were on another.
I agree with you that his abortion stances have changed.
30 times
yes,
that's
that's not misinformation. That's just he did change his mind about that. Again, Kamala Harris has changed her mind on things far more recently than that. With the Tim Walz stuff, it's exaggerations of his personal record. It's more than changing policies, which is something you expect from political figures.
They're also running that they have the moral high ground against Trump. Like that's precisely the problem. Is they say Trump is such a nasty liar. His character makes him unfit to be president. But then they're apparently doing the same exact thing that they're projecting onto him. So you don't have the moral high ground anymore if you're behaving in the same way that you accuse your opponent of.
Yeah. As the moderate and centrist on this group of people, I think they're all mentally, emotionally, psychologically unfit to serve in office. I apply that to Donald Trump, Kamala Harris, both running mates, and almost the entire Senate and all of the Congress. But
there's a big lie, though. The fact that he thinks he won the election. So we can't deny that. Do you think that Joe Biden won the election in 2020?
I think
yes.
he did, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the big lie that I think we really.
That was I mean I have criticized Donald Trump for that endlessly on the show and otherwise. He was wrong to do it. Even beyond it being wrong, he damaged his own chances of being president again. It didn't come to anything. It was not good.
And I also think that there were legitimate concerns about the voting processes in 2020. And what I typically say is that the language shouldn't have been stolen. It should have been rigged, because the fundamental issue was with the last minute rule changes ahead of the election, where they were allowing ballots in that would have never been allowed in any prior year.
Well, it's because it was a pandemic.
Right, I understand why they did it, but I don't think it was the right move. Like, Pennsylvania should have never suspended matching signatures on mail-in ballots like they did in 2020. And because Trump has exaggerated some of what happened for perhaps his own benefit or his campaign's benefit.
Or for his detriment. Honestly.
Then that has made it harder to have a legitimate conversation that needs to be had about voter fraud and the rule changes that took place in 2020.
And I also can't now, again, I am not a supporter of Trump, and I will not be voting for Trump. I will certainly not be voting for the Democrats. But I can't find his denial of the election to be totally disqualifying, given that think of all the Democrats who have done the same thing, including Hillary Clinton, who said Donald Trump was an illegitimate president in 2016 due to what she said was the unfairness of Russian bots and hacks and all of that.
And I
disagree
with her on that too. I mean, the biggest mistake.
That was horrible.
Russia intervened without a doubt. I definitely agree with that. Jill Stein voters, people voted for Jill Stein, but that didn't turn the election for her. What turned the election was, I don't know, having an office in Wisconsin like your husband, Bill Clinton, said you should have, but instead they said, old man, we don't listen to you. The greatest politician probably in our generation, don't listen to.
And I think an even more apt comparison than Hillary Clinton is if you go to the Bush-Gore election, right? I mean, in 2000, you had half a dozen Democrats actually invoke the same piece of legislation that Trump tried to get Pence to invoke during the January 6th
That election was actually invalid.
The
problem with that election is it was invalid.
Well, George W. Bush had called in favors, his brother. I mean, there's...
But now, are you doing election denial now?
No, but it was 2000. I think pretty much the entire country agreed on that.
But the point is that there was a legislative process for challenging electors that was being used on January 6th, and everyone acts like this was so unprecedented for Trump to think that he might have had a claim to send the votes back to the states for an audit.
But nobody wanted to do so, whereas with George W. There's a difference.
Yeah.
If the Democrats wanted to do so,
we don't put whether
fine,
the election was legitimate enough
Capitol.
to a popular opinion kind of decision.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
All right, more Rising to come. Stay tuned. Kamala Harris sat down for a 40-minute interview with the host of Call Her Daddy podcast, Alexander Cooper, where she answered on a wide array of topics, including reproductive rights, sexual abuse, making America feel safer for women. The Call Her Daddy podcast is apparently the most listened to podcast for women, has millions of listeners who tune in for conversations about relationships, sex, and women's empowerment. Now, Cooper focused the interview with Kamala on the subject of women, but she also had a funny exchange when she asked if there are any laws against men's bodies. And 2 years after the overturning of Roe v. Wade, here's how Kamala reacted.
One of the biggest conversations in this year's election revolves around a woman's body.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I want to take a moment, and can we try to think of any law that gives the government the power to make a decision.
I know what you're going to ask.
About a man's body. Let's
no.
Just pause.
No.
Is there any law?
No. No. It's no. Look, we are a work in progress.
Cooper made abortion a key issue of discussion in her conversation with the vice president.
Can you explain and talk about what is actually happening to abortion access right now in this country?
So let's talk about how it affects a real person. The majority of women who receive abortion care are mothers. By the way, every state in the South, except for Virginia, has an abortion ban, okay? Imagine she's in a state with an abortion ban. 1 out of 3 women are, by the way, in our country. And she's a mom. So she's going to have to figure out, one, God help her if she has affordable childcare. God help her if she has paid leave. And then she's going to have to go to the airport, stand in a TSA line, sit on a plane next to a perfect stranger to go to a city where she's never been to receive the care she needs. She's going to probably have to get right back on that plane because she's got those kids. Her best friend's probably not with her because that's who's taking care of the kids. To get back in that TSA line, to get back on a plane, to go home.
And that's all if they can even afford the plane ticket or the bus ticket.
Exactly.
Cooper asked Harris about a comment that her opponent, Donald Trump, recently made, who she also invited on her show to discuss rights for women.
At a rally in Pennsylvania, former President Trump recently told women, "You will be protected and I will be your protector." What do you make of that?
So he who, when he was president, hand-selected 3 members of the United States Supreme Court with the intention that they would undo the protections of Roe v. Wade. And they did just as he intended. And there are now 20 states with Trump abortion bans, including bans that make no exception for rape or incest, which we just discussed, which means that you're telling a survivor of a crime of a violation to their body they don't have a right to make a decision about what happens to their body next, which is immoral. So this is the same guy that is now saying that. This is the same guy who said that women should be punished for having abortions. This is the same guy who uses the kind of language he does to describe women.
While some were very pleased to see the vice president on Cooper's show, not all Call Her Daddy fans were happy about the interview. Some members of the so-called Daddy Gang were disappointed to see Cooper get political, some saying they will never listen to the show again, that it feels like propaganda, and that they are disgusted, while other listeners were angry that the interview with Harris did not address America's other pressing issues, like immigration or the devastation from Hurricane Helene.
So I really wanted to play that first clip that we talked about, which was, I think, the most viral moment on social media. Kamala Harris being, asked about laws that would specifically pertain to men's bodies, and they have a laugh about it. But here's where I don't get it, and you'll probably agree with me here. Yeah. So what about the vaccine mandate? What about any number of policies that affect, not specifically men's bodies, I guess, but there are all laws are laws restricting what you can do with your body, including drug laws, including there's laws that you can't sell your kidney. I think that law should not exist. I think you should be able to sell extra kidney if you want, because I'm a radical libertarian anarchist. But all laws are infringements on what you can do with your body. So I don't find that framing so persuasive.
And how about the draft?
Sure, yeah, there is a men-specific example.
These aren't laws that are restricting your ability to.
Of course they are. Okay. That's what a law is.
First off, the draft doesn't exist, so we'll start with that. It no longer exists, and
I'm sure Robbie had to sign up for it when he came of age, didn't you?
I burned it.
Yeah,
no, I don't know. I think the draft should not exist.
Right. Listen,
I think the draft is abolished under the amendment that prevents slavery.
If it were
They're not
up
currently
to me,
drafting people, but it does exist.
If it were up to me, we would be forcing vasectomies on men, and we would be asking men to take their sperm and freeze it.
Wait, what are we doing now?
We're talking that's what's happening to us, and I think we should put that on the table. In Pennsylvania, Representative Chris Rabb actually put forward, a man, by the way, from Philadelphia, put forward a bill to urge for vasectomies for men under the age, I believe, mid-30s. Because this is what's happening to women. We're shutting down women's health clinics. Their bodies are being legislated left and right. As you know, we've talked about it exhaustively on the show. Too many women are being forced to go to different states to get access to health care when they have an ectopic pregnancy or potential miscarriage, which is true. People are dying on the road. You have to be able to afford it. At the end of the day, it's all about a woman's body.
But it's not all about a woman's body. I don't agree with the policies.
Baby goes into the world. Republicans don't seem to care about it because they cut funding across the board for children.
So the policies you're outlining, I'm not in support of them. I don't want to put limitations on abortion, at least early on. I think limitations later on are fine. But I would not, the language of restrictions on women's bodies is just, I find it in totally bad faith to use that, because that's what all laws are restrictions on what you get to do with your bodies. We don't recognize it as specifically having to do with your own, skin or whatever in other contexts. That's what a law is. It's restrictions on things you can do. Now, I want to have a society where, broadly speaking, wherever possible, we don't make decisions for other people. We let you say, you organize your life the way you want, and it's none of my business or the government's business. That's why I support decriminalizing all drugs, and I don't support public health measures, including what we did on COVID, because I think that's your choice, whether to get a vaccine or whether to wear a mask or whether to do all of those things. But those are restrictions that were made by government on your bodily autonomy, and that's just what government policy is. You can say those things are bad, but you can't.
Abortions are choice, and oftentimes, abortions are made because there was rape and incest. Abortion is taken because a person cannot afford to have a child, possibly because of rape or incest. And
you might. I'm not saying whether those are moral or immoral choices, but they are choices, right?
So if you have an ectopic pregnancy and you could die, my mother had one and she almost died. She was told not to. It is an abortion. Legally, it's listed as an abortion. Yes, it is. In Arizona, it is. Come on. I know people who went through it. Amber, this has been litigated. I am sorry, but this has been litigated over and over and fact-checked. I don't know what facts you're looking at, but that's just not the case. Arizona law, Southern law, Texas law, Florida, Georgia. We can go Louisiana. If you have an ectopic abortion, not only is it criminalized, and the doctor
no, it's not.
Can be prosecuted.
This is a flat-out lie. There is not a single state in the country that does not allow you to get rid of an ectopic pregnancy. You're just making things up. I'm sorry that your friend had to
through it.
Well, then the doctor that was treating your friend should lose their license.
The difference is that there are doctors who are. Well,
nobody is getting prosecuted for ending an ectopic pregnancy.
The doctors are afraid. The doctors are not doing it in some cases because they're afraid. They think they're misreading the law, and so they're not going to do it because they're worried.
In Texas, when that occurred,
so I think it's fair to point out
that doctor was full of and they're doing it for political reasons because they want to scare people like you.
So when the police came to her door and arrested her, she did that
The doctor got arrested for ending an ectopic pregnancy?
No, for treating somebody for an abortion. And it's based, okay, so do you think
So
a doctor
not an
knows if it's ectopic or if it's not ectopic?
Does a doctor know? Yes.
So, no,
the
police.
It's an ultrasound. It would be in their medical records,
which she can't give to police, as you know.
So I do worry.
This is the murkiness of the law. When you have so many oppressive laws like this, and you're defunding health clinics for women simultaneously.
Who is defunding health clinics?
The law is not. The law is not. The law is not murky, but I agree with you that it can be subject if an unintended consequence is doctors not wanting to perform procedure when it's medically necessary because they don't want to run afoul of the law, even though you're correct that the law does not actually criminalize it.
The Texas law specifically says, like, you can read it, it's a clause in the law that says miscarriage care is exempt under this law. So
and how does that play out? So somebody says that this doctor was performing an ectopic pregnancy procedure, an abortion, that's how it is medically listed, but then the police officer comes and who has no experience in medical background and says, shut down this clinic, I'm arresting you right now, I'm arresting the woman who's bleeding right now on the table and just had the... How does that play out, Amber? I'm just curious.
I am curious because it sounds like a ridiculous fantasy.
It's a bad law, and it's put together with clinics that are being underfunded or defunded entirely and shut down. You have doctors who are afraid of being arrested, and you have law enforcement who knows nothing about this issue whatsoever. And by the time they actually do try to enforce it, what are they going to look at the medical records, which they don't have access to, and let the woman die on the table? These are fear-mongering laws, and it's all to attack women, and that's what we're talking about in terms of women.
I don't agree with you that it's attack women. It's a policy you can disagree with. I am literally and figuratively in the middle right now because I am conflicted about some of these laws. I don't like abortion. I don't want abortions to take place. I also think there will be unintended consequences of having laws restricting it that go too far. I am where most of the country is in thinking that we should seek to make it not something that is celebrated or taking place, but the option needs to be available in certain extreme cases. Safe, legal, and rare, I'm where the majority of Americans are.
So let's put it up.
But I don't think it's going back to what she said on the podcast, it's not about controlling women. It's about, from the pro-life perspective, it's protecting, it's that the rights of the baby, the fetus, there are some, and when to decide that those rights are superseding your right to have an abortion.
Well, and also none of us have mentioned the fact that we're talking about women's bodies, but there's also another body involved. And you can dispute whether or not you think a fetus is a life worth protecting, but it's not just a woman's body that's at play here. And the Texas law does not allow criminalization of doctors, actually. It only allows civil lawsuits. So whoever told you that they had a police officer come to their clinic and arrest them for an ectopic pregnancy, I'm sorry, but they're lying to you.
Well, we've got a lot more to get to today. I don't want to force anything on
anybody. It doesn't hurt, and it's reversible.
Okay. We have a lot more to get to today, maybe forced vasectomies. Let us know what you think in the comments. Stay tuned. Saturday Night Live makes fun of a lot of Republicans and Trump, but they actually took aim at Kamala Harris's running mate, Tim Walz, on this past weekend's show. It was pretty funny. Let's watch.
Okay, he's out there. He's doing his thing, whatever that may be.
Okay, come on, just relax. You haven't had a night off in 3 months. Do you want to watch something less stressful like the Menendez Brothers show?
I don't know, Dougie. I kind of wish I had picked Josh right now.
Oh, Josh Shapiro?
No, Josh. Cabernet.
Look, Tim will be fine. It's not like he's going to say something crazy.
I've become friends with school shooters.
SNL didn't stop there. Take a look.
I'm a knucklehead. But I'm sure this guy has some things he'd want to, back out of as well.
He's right about that. That's an area where we have a lot of common ground.
I thought it was pretty funny. Maya Rudolph does a good job with Kamala, and that was Jim Gaffigan, I think. Yeah. That was a good choice for Tim Walz.
And Andy Samberg playing Dougie. It was, I'm sorry, but It's true. That was exactly the vibe that I was feeling. I was like, why are you getting along? This is not the point. Yes, your people like you and our people like you. Like, we know that. Now, just go for it. That's all you want to see when you watch a debate. That's what Americans like when they watch a debate is the fighting. And it was kind of boring, frankly.
I think J.D. Vance kind of tricked Tim Walz a little bit because early on in the debate, he said something like, I actually agree with Tim on this, and then, of course, went on to the area of disagreement, and it was very disarming. Like, I don't think Governor Walz was expecting him to be so polite, and the Midwestern nights just oozed out of both of them after that.
So I don't watch a lot of SNL. I don't find it all that funny, although they had a follow-up segment. It must have been in the same episode on the guy. He's a funny comedian who does the George Washington impression. Have you seen that?
Yeah,
Nehoray
Levy.
Where they talk about the systems of weights and measures is the reason we're declaring independence from the British. It's like a segment from a year ago. They had another one of those last night or the other night. I watched it. It was pretty funny. So I appreciate that. I also do appreciate when SNL does successfully make fun of some Democrats a little bit, because I think some of their anti-Trump comedy is very low-hanging fruit and is not particularly profound. I thought Alec Baldwin's Trump impression was just so lazy, and so I did not laugh.
It gets old because Trump is the impression.
Trump himself is so funny that
exactly,
somebody portraying him isn't necessarily funny.
I also don't think satire is very funny when there's a very obvious bitterness behind it. Like, you kind of have to be in on the joke, and you have to be willing to poke fun without it being outright nasty. Yeah. And unfortunately, late night comedy and Saturday Night Live kind of fall into that trap of, because they do genuinely dislike Trump so much, it comes across as not trying to be funny, but just trying to be mean.
Yeah, like Dana Carvey doing George H.W. Bush, those were so funny.
He's doing Biden now. Yeah. Did you see? It's so good.
His Biden is very good.
Yeah, he's just tremendously talented.
My favorite still to throw back is to 2008 when McCain and Obama were running against each other. And say what you will, I mean, people still respected McCain. McCain was wandering around during the debate, bumping into the cameras, and that was because that happened in real life during the debate, and then they played it out on SNL.
Larry David doing Bernie is really funny. Yeah, that's just dead
they're related.
Tina Fey's Sarah Palin will live in infamy.
Yes,
I mean, she literally was so good at being Sarah Palin that people thought Sarah Palin actually said, "I can see Russia from my house."
The Hillary Clinton ones have been pretty good, both Amy Poehler and then whoever did her later on.
Kate McKinnon, except for the was it the Imagine piano performance?
That was
after
that
she
was
lost.
That was not funny. That was
that was sad.
My favorite Kate McKinnon
therapy for these people.
My favorite Kate McKinnon is Rudy Giuliani, though. That's my absolute favorite.
Yeah, she does a good Rudy Giuliani.
That's a weird one.
Yeah.
Bring back equal opportunity comedy.
Yeah, yes, I don't watch a lot of SNL anymore. There's a new movie about it too.
Yeah,
too far.
50 years.
Unnecessary.
Yeah.
No, but it's the 50-year mark, and Lorne Michaels is going to step down, and it seems like our favorite Tina Fey is going to take over, and I think that should be the case because she's a great writer, she's a great producer, she's obviously been on the show. I think it's going to be great moving forward.
Tina Fey's going to take over?
They say.
They say?
I don't know if it's signed in ink, but that's the rumor.
I'd rather have more 30 Rock, which is like the funniest television
also
show.
Her show.
Ever. Right, yeah.
I like Girls 5 Eva, the new one. Have you seen the show?
No, what's that?
If you haven't checked out Girls 5 Eva, it came out like a little bit after the pandemic started, and then it didn't get a lot of attention, and then it went out of production for a couple years and came back again. It is so funny. Go check it out. It's about this pop group that got back together like 20 years later in their 40s, like my age. So I'm 40, just to be clear. I'm not in my 40s. So they're a little bit older than me, but they were pop stars in their 20s. And, now everybody's making fun of the 2000 era, the aughts, and how ridiculous everything was. So funny.
As long as we're just randomly talking about television, are either of you watching this? I'm not watching it, but literally everyone is talking about it right now, the Love is Blind in DC thing.
I'm 2 episodes in, yes.
What? Tell us about it.
Well, don't give it away. I'm a huge Love is Blind fan.
I had never heard of this show until Thursday, and now I've heard nothing but this about it.
You've never heard of Love is Blind?
I don't watch a lot of reality TV.
I don't either, but this is different. This is a sociological experiment. It's like you're Margaret Mead watching people in their element. Like
no one is, murdered during the psychological experiment. I don't care.
Yeah. No spoilers, but it's kind of disappointing because you expect there to be a lot of DC douchebags, right? Like you want the consultants, and there's actually a journalist on the show, but she gets no airtime.
Is it Olivia Nuzzi?
That would be funny.
I think it would be, the only problem with that is that you would be able to tell that it was RFK immediately on the other side.
Oh my God!
Because of the
spoiler alert.
So that's the premise is that they can't. Oh boy, that you can't see the person. You just have to hear them.
Yes, you just talk through a wall and date through a wall, and then you get engaged, and then you meet each other, and of course, inevitably, a lot of them are not attracted to each other, and it goes down in hilarious flames.
But some have survived and have babies.
Sometimes.
Love those.
Sometimes.
Love those.
Wow. All right. I think that does it for us today on Rising. Stick a fork in us. We're done. Be sure to like, share, and subscribe so you never miss any of our content. And for those of you who like to listen while we're on the go, we're available anywhere you can find podcasts because love truly is blind. See you tomorrow.